In this video, we're going to take a close look at the newest flagship model in the legendary MPC line, the Akai Professional Mpc X. The X is a standalone MPC, engineered to be the ultimate studio centerpiece for the modern producer. Infinitely more than a drum machine, this music production center is fully equipped to take your musical ideas from inspired start to well-crafted finish. You can program drum patterns with that classic MPC swing, edit and arrange your samples using the 10.1-inch multi-touch screen, and even record vocals and live instrumentation as audio tracks directly into your MPC project using the X. Audio tracks and many other features new to the MPC are powered by MPC Software 2.0, which runs natively on the X in standalone mode. Simply put, the Mpc X is bigger than beats. It's an instrument in its own right. Mpc X features 2 gigs of RAM and 16 gigs of onboard storage. 10 gigs of sound content are included, pre-installed in the form of the Vault 2.0. The Vault features samples, kits, and instruments from world-class sound design companies including Loopmasters, Capsun Audio, Toolroom, MVP Loops, CR2 Records, as well as our own signature sounds. That's tens of thousands of pro-level sounds at your disposal as soon as you fire up the X. If that's not enough, every month we release new MPC expansion packs covering the newest subgenres and emerging musical styles created by some of the world's top producers. Weighing in at 12.5 pounds, the Mpc X is built like a tank with a design that takes the feel and form factor of the older workhorse MPC models into the future. When tethered to a computer, X acts as a controller for the desktop version of Mpc 2.0. This is useful when you want the best of both worlds, to use your favorite virtual instruments and effects, while also taking advantage of the powerful feature set of MPC Software 2.0 and the legendary MPC workflow. Let's take a closer look at the robust features that make the X tick. Before continuing on with the hardware features of the X, for those looking to learn more about the MPC Live or MPC Software 2.0, we have a number of other videos that cover those topics in greater detail, including the MPC Software 2.0 Overview series, our MPC Live product overview video, and our MPC Lounge series of short tutorials. Now, on to the X. At the core of the Mpc X workflow is a 10.1-inch full-color multi-touch screen where every feature, function, and parameter is easily accessible. Speaking of workflow, one of the design features that make the X a joy to use is its wealth of dedicated buttons. This makes dipping in and out of the various MPC menus and executing the actions associated with track creation quick and intuitive. To the right on the top panel, you have the erase, undo, and copy buttons. The performance buttons above the drum pads go directly to the MPC's performance modes. Quickly access all the different MPC modes by pressing Menu. Select Browse to search your sample library or open up previously saved projects. Press the Step Sequence button to immediately begin drawing in patterns for playback on the time division grid. Sampler is where audio can be directly recorded into the MPC for later editing, processing, and mixing in the sequence. Use XYFX to add and perform various effects in real time by moving across the touchscreen. There are a range of killer effects to choose from, including filters, delays, flangers, and phasers. Pad Perform lets you assign musical scales, chords, and progressions to the pads for creative pad performances and a unique approach to inventing new melodies and harmonic progressions. Press F key to use those same buttons to select one of the 6 options shown at the bottom edge of the screen at any given time. This is good for those who prefer to use the hardware buttons instead of those featured on the multi-touch display, such as when creating drum rolls and note repeat. Of course, you can't have an MPC without industry-defining pads. The Mpc X features 16 velocity-sensitive RGB illuminated thick fat pads. Responding to how you play, the intensity of the light on the pads varies from light to dark depending on how hard they're struck. The individual pad colors are fully customizable. The pad bank section will be familiar to anyone with experience using MPCs. Each kit or program is a group of samples assigned to the pads. You can create up to 8 banks of pad samples or up to 128 individual sounds per program using the pad bank buttons at the top of the unit. Banks A through D, or 1 through 4, can be accessed by pressing their respective buttons. E through H, or banks 5 through 8, can be accessed by holding Shift and clicking their buttons. When the full level button is pressed and lit, pads will trigger their samples at the maximum velocity level of 127. When Shift clicked, the pads will trigger their samples at the half velocity level of 64. Use 16 level to temporarily copy the last pad hit to all 16 pads. This is particularly useful for creating melodies on the pads, but there are a number of other selectable parameters available as well. To the left of the pads are 16 Q-Link knobs with graphical OLED displays above each knob. A major performance feature on the MPC X, these touch-sensitive knobs are used to adjust various parameters and settings. The 16 OLEDs provide visual feedback for whatever parameter you're controlling at the moment. This is great for on-the-fly sound design or the tweaking of plug-in effects parameters when working in controller mode. Select the group of functions the Q-Link knobs control using these buttons at the top of the Q-Link section. Press the project button to use the Q-Link knobs to adjust parameters related to the currently selected project. Select the program button to use the Q-Link knobs to adjust program parameters. Press the pad parameter button to use Q-Link knobs to adjust one parameter across all 16 pads. Each Q-Link knob corresponds to the pad with the same number and position in the 4x4 layout. Pressing screen control lets you adjust parameters in the currently selected mode as shown in the display. Press and hold Shift and screen control to enter Q-Link edit mode. Here, you can use the Learn function to quickly assign parameters to the knobs. Part of what makes the MPC X much more than a drum machine is its ability to easily record high-quality audio. Looking at the I/O portion of the hardware, we start with the level meter. The level meter graphically indicates the level of audio signal shown in the display strip below. This meter can be used to display individual programs or can be locked to the main outs if preferred. Press the Record Arm button to arm or disarm recording in the sampler or looper. Read-Write records and plays back automation. Press Mute to mute the item shown in the display strip below the level meters. Press the Solo button to solo the currently selected program. Use the Gain 1 and Gain 2 knobs to adjust the gain of the incoming signal from input 1 and 2 on the rear panel, or the instrument 1 and 2 inputs on the front panel. The rear front switch determines which panel the MPC will pull the incoming audio from. The X can even support the use of phantom-powered microphones using this switch. The 3 and 4 record gain knob adjusts the gain of the incoming signal from input 3 and 4 on the rear panel. Use the level meter to check the record level. Turn the master knob to adjust the volume level of the main left and right outputs. Use the direct main knob to adjust the balance between the input and output signals in your headphones. This is great for controlling the input to output signal ratio as you record new audio into the MPC. Choose if the signal in your headphones is a stereo or mono monitor feed using this switch. When set to stereo, the headphone signal will split so that the input signal is heard in the left ear, while the output signal is heard in the right. When set to mono, the input and output signals are blended into a single, summed mix, which is heard in both ears. As you can see, the MPC X provides a great amount of control over how you want your incoming audio to sound in relation to the current track, prior to hitting record. Let's look below the wrist pad at the front panel. Here we have the SD card slot. Useful as a method of storing and accessing files, an SD card also enables quick access to your projects when switching between standalone and controller modes. In controller mode, your computer reads the X as an SD card reader among many things, making it easy to open the sequences and sounds from your track originally started in standalone mode. Connect any non-latching foot switch to control various MPC functions such as play, record, note repeat, or even a trigger pad, with foot switch 1 and foot switch 2. Instrument 1 and Instrument 2 are inputs for guitar, bass, and instrument level sources. To the right is the mix knob. Adjust the knob to tweak the balance between the main left and right outputs and the signal sent from outputs 3 and 4 when listening back using headphones. This is really useful when recording vocals or live instruments in the MPC, but you only want to hear certain parts of the mix. Here we have headphone outputs. Both 1/8 inch and 1/4 inch cans are supported. Rounding out the front panel is the headphone volume knob. Now let's take a look at the rear panel. Moving from left to right, we have two mic XLR TRS inputs 1 and 2. For inputs 3 and 4, you can use either 1/4-inch input cables or RCA cables. Use RCA inputs to connect sources with line level outputs or capture the audio from a turntable. Set the phono/line switch depending on whether you're using the RCA or line inputs. If you're sending a phono level signal to the input 3 and 4 RCA connectors and hear a low hum or buzz, it can mean the turntable is not grounded. If the turntable has a grounding wire, connect it here to the grounding terminal. Next, we have the 8 outputs. Left and right, or outputs 1 and 2, are the main outputs carrying your master mix. Connect these outputs to your speaker system. Using 1/4-inch outs, send signal from outputs 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and 7 and 8 to an external mixer for separate processing. For instance, if you wanted to separate out the various parts of your drum kit and process sounds individually, you can do that by using these outputs. The MPC X can control external analog synth gear using the 8 built-in CV ports. These ports can be configured to send pitch, velocity, and gate CV. You can also map the CV ports to specific cue links into your keyboard's mod wheel. Automate knob movements, notes, and gates, and play it all back in real time with the MPC sequencer. This turns your MPC software into one of the best modular sequencers available. Devices are connected to the MPC X using the 1/8-inch inputs. There are 2 MIDI inputs and 4 MIDI outputs. The 2 USB Type-A ports can be used for plugging devices directly into the MPC X. These devices can include such things as a thumb drive to import your personal samples and save projects, USB-powered MIDI instruments that can be used to play the built-in library of instruments featured in the vault, and even a QWERTY keyboard for typing and saving metadata relevant to your project. Next, we have the USB Type-B port used for connecting live to a computer and accessing controller mode. The power input is used to connect the included power adapter. The power adapter restraint featured here is used to secure the power adapter cable to prevent you from accidentally unplugging the X in the middle of a session. Lastly, but certainly not least, is the power switch, used for turning the X on and off. And that sums up the hardware features of the Akai Professional MPC X. This is the end product of 30 years of music production center evolution, all in one standalone masterpiece. We hope the X will be the creative hub of your studio for years to come.